Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider alongside Brandon Crossland. Brandon, it's great to have you on again. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Ben. It's good to be back for another episode of Grid Live Encore, where we do have a lot of fun talking about the minor leagues of motorsport. And it's going to be another good show tonight from the Sin City, Las Vegas, and a lot of things to talk about for sure.
Yeah, only two series in action, but they're both in Las Vegas, both NASCAR, and yeah, we still have a full show. So let's just jump right into it here. Truck Series, we'll start with that. Some great action up front on Friday night. Just under 10 to go. It looked like Christian Eckes might have a shot at the win, but he was taken out after a late block to defend against Kyle Busch. Went slightly wrong. Eckes ended up finishing in 28th. Busch's teammates, and by extension, I guess you could say his employees at Kyle Busch Motorsports, both had fast trucks as well. John Hunter Nemechek took pole position, but it was Chandler Smith who ended up leading the most laps and winning the race. The win was the third of Chandler Smith's career. Nemechek got caught up in a late race incident and ended up finishing 25th. So, Brandon, here's the first question for tonight. We know that John Hunter Nemechek has a lot of speed this year. He's shown that. He obviously had a fantastic season last year. And Chandler Smith looks better than he ever has in his young career here. And you got to think Nemechek's going to find a way to get in the victory lane sooner rather than later. So looking at the speed of KBM, is it shaping up to be KBM versus the field for the championship this season, or is it still a little bit too early to tell?
I'd say pump the brakes, as it might be said on Race Up, but not so fast about that. KBM, yeah, they've got some great trucks. And Chandler Smith, a very talented driver, really great in a super late model as well. And, the 51 is always going to be filled with great driving talent. And, again, not so much can be said about John Hunter Nemechek's talent as well in the Ford truck. But I think it's still early in the season, and there's plenty of talent coming from ThorSport Racing. And really glad to see Ty Majeski get that shot in the 99 truck for the full season. 2020 Snowball Derby winner, and he knows how to get it done. So wait till we go to some short tracks. And I'm also excited to see Carson Hocevar with Nice Motorsports back another year. There's plenty of great talented teams in the rest of the field. I think KBM still has to keep on guard. Of course, they've got a truck in the round of 16 for sure, but no, still plenty of schedule to be taken on, and a lot of road courses as well. Glad to be going to Watkins Glen this year.
Yes, definitely something to look forward to there, as well as Sonoma as well, back on the schedule for the first time in a while. We do have a comment from one of our regulars here, Zachary Wall, asking, will Noah win soon? He's finished third, second, and second. I think that's Noah Gragson in the Xfinity Series. We can talk about that a little bit later, I guess. And then asking, is Chandler Smith the strongest truck so far this year? Well, I think I just kind of answered that question with the question I posed to you. I think KBM is certainly shaping up to be the organization to beat. I wouldn't go quite so far as to call them a KBM versus the field yet. Like
they are so far. But
yeah, absolutely. I think Smith, we forget, he's not even 20 years old yet. He's still a very, very young driver and
about to be a dad.
Yeah. I mean, lots of great stuff going on in his life, and really, really talented race car driver. I think he's only got room to continue to get better from here. You've seen it in ARCA, and now you're seeing it in trucks as well. It's kind of amazing to see how well he's done so far.
And I'll tell you what, he's super competitive too. Chandler Smith, I've seen the fire in that kid's eyes when he's been done wrong on the racetrack. You better watch out for Chandler Smith. He is aggressive in the best kind of way.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes very well with the theme of who his owner is. Kyle Busch certainly has to be happy with how he's doing. Our own Adam Lemerise from Grid Live Pre-Race and Grid Live Wrap-Up and Grid Tonight as well says Noah will win this year. I think that's a pretty safe bet based on how the last couple of seasons have gone for him. Let's keep the KBM conversation going here a little bit. I want to talk about the team owner, Kyle Busch here. After Zane Smith was disqualified in post-race inspection, Busch crossed the finish line third, so he was promoted to second. And that gives him a total of 19 top two finishes in his last 21 Truck Series starts. So, Brandon, you know where I stand on the issue of Cup drivers in the lower series, but
I do.
I have to say, to jump into a truck only 5 times a year, which drives completely different from your Cup car, and be able to do what Kyle Busch has done, where he has a greater than 90% top 2 rate since 2018. How impressive is this run that he's been on recently?
It's pretty impressive. Okay, it is. But at the same time, I like to toy with the idea: how impressive would it be for Michael Jordan to go back down to the G League all of a sudden and win multiple races? I mean, I don't think this is just from an average Joe perspective. Of course, I'm not there every weekend physically, but I don't think the Truck Series benefits as much from Kyle Busch races as it's presented on the broadcast. Maybe they do, but I don't think it's healthy for the other teams whenever you have Kyle Busch filling up the podium spots. But it's been pretty impressive, though. I mean, you can't argue with. I mean, it's still tough to win a truck race. It's still tough to finish top 5, but he's got the best of the equipment, and it just all comes down to money in the Truck Series a lot of the time. But I mean, he's got the talent to show for it. So overall, yes, very impressive.
Yeah, I certainly don't disagree with that either. And like I said, I think people know where I stand on the issue, generally speaking. But one thing that I like to emphasize when we do have these conversations is, Kyle Busch doesn't make the rules, even though he does own the trucks that he's driving. It is NASCAR that allows for these things to take place here. We have a comment from our own Joe San Diego here. I agree with Brandon from an unaverage Joe. Well,
unaverage Joe.
There you
I'll
go.
take it.
Yeah. No, I think, in the case of, like, for people to understand what Kyle Busch, does here, it is not as impressive as if he were doing this in the Cup Series. I think we can all agree from that standpoint. But I do think we have to give Truck Series drivers some credit as well. Obviously, they're in most cases they're younger, they're not as experienced, but you do have your guys like Matt Crafton, who I think just crossed over 500 consecutive starts. I mean, we should talk about that a little bit. I mean, that is a very impressive statistic as well. When you consider a Truck Series has only been around for a little more than 25 years here. Crafton's been a mainstay. Obviously, he's a multiple-time champion. You still have Johnny Sauter out there. He's not quite in the equipment this season that he's been in years past, but in the past he's been out there with GMS and ThorSport and trucks that are capable of winning week in and week out. So you do have your truck lifers, as you would call them, and your veterans in the series as well. So these are still talented race car drivers, and Kyle's getting in a car or truck in this case that drives very differently than what he's used to driving on Sundays. So, even though I stand on the side of, I don't think these guys should necessarily be allowed to go down and race in these divisions, certainly not as often as they do. And I credit NASCAR for putting those limits on and making sure that on most weekends, the spotlight does stay with the series regulars. I do think it's very impressive what Kyle has done. And I think it deserves a mention and, for us to talk about it here, to finish in first or second, so often, there's nothing you can really say that takes. I mean, you have to give credit where it's due, even if it is in the lower divisions, because you're still racing against talented drivers.
Yeah, Ben, it's impressive, but I think we're just tired of talking about it. That may be the sore. It's just a dead horse at this point, but like. It is impressive. I will not deny that. It's impressive. I think it's been such a talking point the last several years. A lot of us are just collectively like waiting for it to be over with.
Yeah, well, it is over with in the Xfinity series for now.
Yes, we've won one battle, but we haven't won the war.
Yes. Yeah, Kyle, of course, the all-time winningest driver in both the Xfinity series and the Truck Series. And of course, he does own his own team in the Truck Series, so he is still doing those few races a year there. But we talked about on the first ever episode of this show, he is stepping back from the Xfinity races that he's been doing. So if you're not a fan of this, you do get a little bit of relief there, but you do still have to deal with it. And the drivers still have to deal with it as well. Kyle is clearly very tough competition. And this brings me to a follow-up question here. We talk a lot of times about drivers who have won races in all three National Touring Series and NASCAR. Kyle Busch is a two-time Cup champion. He won the 2009 what was then the Nationwide Series is now the Xfinity Series Championship. So he only needs the truck title for the Triple Crown, if you will, here, if you allow me to coin a new term. I know we have several other Triple Crowns in the world of motorsports. But this is a triple crown that nobody's ever accomplished. Austin Dillon, I guess, is still gunning for the Cup championship. He could, in theory, if he were to raise his performance a little bit with RCR, and I have to say RCR, I think, has taken a step up this year so far. He is eligible for that prize to win championships in all three divisions with his truck and Xfinity titles. But Kyle's case is different because the title that he's missing is in one of the two lower divisions. So if you're Kyle Busch, do you consider, maybe a few years down the line when your Cup career comes to an end, you own your own Truck Series team? Is this an achievement that you think it's maybe worth considering? I'll declare for truck points for a year or two and maybe just try to win this championship.
I just sit on this one. And at this point, I think, why not? I mean, he's an incredible race car driver. There's no doubt about it. He's going to be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. He's going to be known as he's going to win more Cup Series championships before he gets out of the Premier Series, I do believe. I think he's going to be known as one of the AJ Foyts of our sport of stock car racing, and it's not my sport, but of stock car racing. And I hope he gets a Indy 500 ride as well before he gets too old for it, if he so desires. But all of that aside, yes, I think he should consider going for that triple. I mean, we've only been able to have this kind of feat done since 1995 when the Truck Series started. So there hasn't really been much time, if you think about it, for other drivers to try to take on such a feat. Yeah, I think this would be a great hallmark to the end of his career. It's certainly capable of doing it. He'll most likely do it in the 51 Toyota, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, and I think that goes back to what the Truck Series started as. I think it was a place for veterans, and obviously it's turned into another step on the development ladder for a lot of drivers, and you've always seen some of that. But I think back, at least when I started following, I'm thinking the mid 2000s, you had your guys like Mike Skinner and Todd Bodine, who we're about to talk about. Actually, good to see him back out there. But your Jack Sprague's, your Ron Hornaday's, NASCAR Hall of Famer, right there. Drivers that were veterans of the sport, never really quite made it at the Cup level, but still went on to have fantastic careers racing in a prestigious NASCAR touring series. And now I think you've kind of seen the switch in terms of what's weighted more in terms of what you see in the series, because you still have your Matt Craftons out there, and your guys like Stuart Friesen in their mid to late 30s, early 40s out there, veterans of the sport that, again, never really made it at the Cup level or had limited starts in the Cup Series, but it's still a place for them to race. But you're seeing a lot more development drivers nowadays, and a lot more teams use that for young prospects looking to one day race in the Cup Series. So I think it would be kind of a way for it to come full circle almost if Kyle Busch decides that's the route he wants to go down. And that would be an achievement that nobody's ever done before. And Kyle Busch certainly has done a lot of things that nobody's ever done before in this sport. I think it would be fitting for him to accomplish something like that.
Yeah, you make a great point going back to the beginning of the Truck Series, and possibly it's kind of turned into a thing that maybe the creators of the Truck Series didn't think it was going to be, just another rung in the road to pro, if you will. And maybe it's kind of going, if Kyle Busch did something like this, it would be reminded of what it truly started as, a place kind of to have fun for some of the older cats at the end of their career to just come out and bump and bang with some trucks. And it's just a novelty thing as it's in its origins, and started at a lot of small tracks out west. I know the first race was at Phoenix, but they went to Pikes Peak and a bunch of other small little venues out west. It's just a little almost a novelty thing that really grew into what it is today.
Yeah, well, I think that's something that I would have maybe liked to see Bobby Labonte do. Because Bobby Labonte's the same way. He has the championship in Xfinity and Cup, not in Truck Series. And I think he kind of spent the last few years of his career driving for, smaller teams that, you wouldn't necessarily think have a shot to win week in and week out, unlike, Joe Gibbs racing with teams that he won his championships with in both Cup and Xfinity. I think somebody like him, it would have been a nice opportunity to continue to race at a top level and maybe accomplish that feat. And Brad Keselowski, very similarly, he had a truck team, which no longer exists, but getting back into the ownership game with RFK Racing now. Again, another situation where the only title he's missing is a truck one. That could be something we see further down the road for him.
Yeah, that'd be nice to see an RFK 6 truck at the end of Brad's career, possibly. And also, you talk about Bobby Labonte. He was just recently in the Whelen Euro Series, so he's definitely still capable, probably still in good shape, and that's a possibility for him too. I'd love to see some older veterans try to get that first ever Triple Crown.
Yeah. What other sport? Thinking Bobby Labonte is a Hall of Famer. We saw Bill Elliott out there for the Xfinity race a few years ago. It's crazy to think, Dale Jr. is still going to do his one race a year. At least this year, we'll see how much longer he keeps doing that.
Hellman's paying the bill every year for that man.
Yeah, but to see these Hall of Famers continue to race, albeit maybe not at the Cup Series level, it is still cool, and it's something that's unique to NASCAR, I think. We have we have several comments here. One from our own Joe Samniego. Could we see KBM have teams and trucks, Xfinity and Cup? Well, they had an Xfinity team in the mid-2010s. Parker Kligerman was the driver there, and Kyle and Kurt even did some races when that was getting started. They didn't quite have the success that he's had in trucks, though. So I wonder if he'd maybe be willing to give that another try, maybe when his career comes to an end. What do you think? Yeah,
possibly. As far as Cup goes, I don't think Kyle Busch ever intends for KBM to go to the Cup level. I think I think his main goal is to develop drivers to get to drive for Joe Gibbs. I think is his main modus operandi, is to make great Toyota development drivers. And that's exactly what they've done. Their super late model program is superb everywhere they go as well.
Yeah. I think Cup is probably something that's pretty unlikely, but who knows? I certainly didn't expect Brad Keselowski to be where he is now. We got a comment from Kobe Lambert. We got the whole Grid Live wrap-up team in the chat here right now.
Hey, guys.
But he says Keselowski's excellent at evaluating driver talent. And you think of how many BKR drivers, Tyler Reddick, Daniel Hemrick, Ryan Blaney. There's a couple more I'm not thinking of off the top of my head here.
That's a great list.
A great list, and all those guys in the Cup Series at this point now racing against Keselowski on Sundays. So he is certainly excellent at that. And we have a comment from Adam as well. Joe Ruttman, Jimmy Hensley. Those are a couple of great names there, competing in the Truck Series where it began. So would be kind of a throwback to see some more veterans back in that series, and we'll see if that's the path that some of them choose to take.
I guess you could say Brad K gave himself more problems by developing all these drivers for him to lose races to.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and Kyle Busch too. A lot of
what have I done?
Drivers have gone on through Gibbs, and Harrison Burton is no longer with Toyota, but he's just getting started in the Cup Series, as is Ty Gilliland. So who knows what the future holds for them, but great to see them their hard work pay off and see them in the Cup Series right now. So let's get back to some highlights from a truck race. I guess we should talk a little bit about why Kyle Busch kept that top 2 streak going. Looked like he had finished in third, but Zane Smith crossed the line in second place. He got disqualified due to a lug nut issue. And then we saw Joe Graff Jr. On Saturday disqualified from the Xfinity race for a similar problem. So, we've seen ever since these new rules have come in where they do tech right after, and we're no longer seeing these encumbered victories or finishes on Tuesday or Wednesday, hearing about them days after the fact, which I think has been great. But the disqualifications, we see one in one of the 3 series probably, once every month or two. Were you surprised to see 2 on the same weekend here?
Yeah, and I was the dumb one here. I didn't even know there were 2. I just heard the one from Zane Smith, so I completely went away. The Joe Graff Jr. one went way over my head, but
he was a little bit further down the pack, so I think that one didn't get as much press.
Well, Zane Smith's was much more costly. Second place. He had a great car all day, and then it's found that you're cheating. So
yeah. I don't know. I mean, that lug nut controversy, I think, is going to be interesting because there's been so much talk about the Cup Series going to the single lug, but the Xfinity and truck teams are still using the traditional 5 lug nut wheels. And you've seen the stories of, I think Joe Gibbs Racing isn't even letting their crews do both. They used to be one of many teams that would utilize their Cup crews for the Xfinity races, and they only want their Cup guys doing the Cup pit stops now because it's such a different feel for everything. So
I completely
kind of
agree with
ironic to
that.
see.
I completely agree with that kind of strategy from Joe Gibbs. That's very smart compared to the other teams that have double duty.
Yeah, but it's funny to see. I think Chase Elliott got disqualified from a race last year because he had too many loose lug nuts or something like that. That's not going to be an issue in the Cup Series anymore. Either the wheel's on or it's not. But
Well, we did see some things at Auto Club where
that
like
is true. Yeah,
even as they did their best, it still failed somebody. I forgot who it was coming out of two.
yeah, we have seen some tire issues. That is true. But
Mm-hmm.
clearly still something that the Xfinity and truck teams are wrestling with, and it got a couple of them disqualified from the entire race this weekend. So something I guess they're going to have to look out for going forward here. Now, I guess we should talk a little bit about the veterans here. We did get a comment from Adam. Shout out to Todd Bodine, the Onion. Good to see the former truck champ back behind the wheel. And he actually mentioned something on the pre-race show that I didn't realize. I guess this was kind of in the works before the whole Marcus Lemonis Twitter thing happened. Noticing that he was so close to 800 NASCAR starts and maybe thinking about ways to try to get there and achieve that milestone. Well, he took the first step to that on Friday night. He made his long-anticipated return to the Truck Series, and the 58-year-old former two-time Truck Series champion hadn't raced in NASCAR since the 2017 Xfinity race in Charlotte, hadn't driven a truck since 2013 in Pocono. So, he finished 21st, which I think is respectable, was solidly in the top 20 early in the race, but he did have a couple of issues. He spun out twice on Friday night. So how would you grade his performance his first race back, and what do you think are some reasonable expectations as you look at his remaining 5 races?
I think it's reasonable to see some of the spin outs here. I mean, he hasn't been in a race truck since Pocono in 2013, like you said. I mean, we can't expect too much out of Todd Bodine, but that's a great effort for your first time back out in so long. So props to Todd Bodine, and also for Marcus Lemonis, giving him this opportunity with Camping World. That's just a great thing. That's such a great thing to see. And of course, Marcus has done a tremendous work with Camping World in the Truck Series this year and last year, and it returning as the title sponsor. It's great news. But I think that as the season goes on, we're going to see him get a better feel for the truck. And also, I like the glasses that he has to wear now that he's up in the years. But yeah, the Onion's still going strong. I think we're going to see some good results from him later on down this season.
Yeah, it clearly showed that he still has what it takes to at least hold pace with the leaders, and solidly, like I said, solidly in the top 20. I was kind of surprised to see just how well he was doing when you consider that he is 58 years old and hasn't driven anything in half a decade here. It's been great to see him back here as a familiar name, very popular driver back in the late 2000s, early 2010s in the Truck Series, and still going strong. And I hope that he has some good runs. I think a top 15 wouldn't be an unrealistic goal at this point. A top 10 would be sick. I think that's something that would really surprise a lot of people and be a great achievement for him, all things considered here. We know he's got the equipment to do it with Stuart Friesen's team, so certainly hoping for good things for him as the season goes on.
Do we know if he's going to come for Darlington? I didn't check the rest of his schedule.
I don't know the rest of the schedule off the top of my head. I know he's doing Sonoma. That's the only one I know. I'd be willing to bet my life on that he's doing. I think that one's on his schedule, but I think Darlington. That sounds familiar to me. I think that might be one of them. But
I just spur of the moment thinking, what a great throwback! All the possibilities of throwbacks that we could get for Brett Bodine at Darlington on a truck.
Yeah. I think there was one. I think Good Sam sponsored Todd in the early 2010s when he was with Red Horse. So somebody posted a concept scheme of what a throwback to that might be. Red Horse Racing is one of the teams that I certainly miss in the Truck Series, one of the Truck Series staples for many, many years. Be nice to see their iconic number font come back or something that they could work with, especially since, it is Lemonis's money with Camping World, and he owns both Camping World and Good Sam. I'm sure there's a great opportunity there.
Yeah.
We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. All right, so let's shift gears here, and I have to say, as we get into the Xfinity Series here, I'm not terribly excited to talk about this next story, and I'll let you know in a second. Here's the story first. We talked a few weeks ago about Jesse Iwuji and his new team with Emmett Smith, but Iwuji has struggled quite mightily to start this season. Iwuji was 34th at Las Vegas and was 16 laps down by lap 172 when he spun out, collecting Ryan Vargas and Stephen Parsons through no fault of their own. And the crash prompted a lot of criticism on social media, with many even questioning Iwuji's qualifications to compete in the second highest level of NASCAR racing. Now, here's why I'm not excited to talk about this. I do consider Jesse Iwuji an outstanding human being and individual. He's an officer in the United States Navy Reserve and deserves credit for accomplishing things that most of us could only ever dream of. He is a fine individual. That being said, the job of an analyst is to remain objective and hold everyone to an equal standard. And I do believe Iwuji's lack of pace on Saturday, I have to say, it's concerning at best and ultimately dangerous at worst. So, Brandon, I'll bring you back in here. Do you think Iwuji should maybe consider taking a step back to trucks or ARCA to continue to develop as a racing driver? And we'll continue the conversation from there.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to second your sentiments of Jesse Iwuji, spectacular person off the track. And, of course, we respect him for his service in the United States Navy. But when it comes down to it, and for the safety of everyone on track and for his own safety, all drivers need to be looked at. Their performance needs to be looked at equally. And if they cannot be at par with the series that they're in consistently, we would look at it the same way for anybody else. They would need to take a step back to trucks or ARCA, reevaluate their performance, reevaluate why they're there. And that's just the way that this kind of thing needs to be carried out. And it's no disrespect to Jesse Iwuji.
Yeah, we have a comment from Kobe. I guess he got Todd's schedule for us. So Darlington is on the list there. So could be interesting to see what a throwback might look like for Todd Bodine. I have to say I completely agree with you. And I think, the case of Jesse in particular, it's not fun to talk about it, obviously, no matter who it is, but it's not just, in fairness to him, it's not just a one-time issue here. We've talked about this several times in recent years. We've talked about how slow, for example, like Norm Benning and Jennifer Jo Cobb have been in the truck series. And of course, they're on shoestring budgets doing the best that they can. But that doesn't change the fact that their speed is what their speed is. And, I was very vocal actually in April of last year when it was announced that Cobb was going to be making her Cup debut with Rick Ware Racing. And I'll still stand by that. I don't think there was any precedent when you look at what NASCAR has approved in the past for somebody like Cobb, who does have top 10 at a super speedway in the truck series at Daytona. That finish stood as the best finish for a woman for 9 years in the truck series. To deny her the opportunity to compete at Talladega, still doesn't sit very well with me in many respects based on what NASCAR has approved in the past. But then we got to the truck series race in the fall, and, she kind of forgot how to use the brake pedal going into the big one coming off the back straightaway. So, it was maybe apparent that maybe NASCAR made a good call there, but they haven't always made good calls in the past, and they've maybe let some things slide that they shouldn't have. So I guess this leads me into a follow-up question here. Do you think NASCAR needs to maybe take a look at raising the minimum speed? Because, it wasn't just Iwuji spinning out. It was the fact that he was 16 laps down, at that point in the race, and still out there logging laps. Do they need to raise the minimum speed or maybe take a look at raising the qualification standards for competition, generally speaking?
It may need to be raised. And I think, it's a safety issue for the other drivers and for the driver that may be under speed themselves. Yes, the minimum speed needs to be raised. And if they can't maintain a minimum speed, they need to be off the track. And also, yes, reevaluate the qualifications for who can make it to the Xfinity series, based on what merit. I mean, if you have a chunk of change, that can't be enough. I mean, money does talk, but I mean, I root for people in the truck series. I rooted for Natalie Decker. I mean, I rooted for Danica Patrick when she was in Cup. I wanted them to do well. I wanted them to succeed, but it was just time after time, the results didn't show for it, and they were in some very good equipment.
Yeah, well, I think in the case of Danica, I think that's somebody that I think has gotten a lot of criticism over the years. And in fairness to her, I think she did have some strong runs here or there, and generally speaking, could at least hold minimum speed. I think the biggest problem comes in where, like you said, I mean, these guys are going so slow that, not only is it, trying to choose my words carefully here, because again, you don't want to be disrespectful because everybody's out there trying their best, but
Right.
it is dangerous. When you get to a certain point, I think back to Milkaduno in the IndyCar series many years ago, and people commenting about how slow she was on high speed ovals where, the racing was so close. And, you think of those cars, if something goes wrong, it can end very, very badly. So, it is a safety issue at the end of the day. And I think, sometimes it may seem like NASCAR is coming down hard on somebody, but if they have good reason to, I think it's a call that they have to make.
It's definitely in the best interest a lot of the times.
Yeah. So let's shift gears up to the front of the field here. Talk about some of the drivers that we expect to be competing for wins week in and week out, and that includes AJ Allmendinger and Colleague Racing. Colleague has taken all 3 poles so far. They've shown a lot of speed. It's Allmendinger's 2nd consecutive pole, and the 3rd in 3 races to start the year for the Colleague team in general. However, they have yet to close the deal here with a race win. So how much longer do you think is it going to take for a Colleague car to enter victory lane? And which driver do you think it will be? Will it be Landon Castle, Daniel Hemrick, or does the veteran Allmendinger get it done?
I think we're going to have to wait till March 26th when we go to Austin, Texas and Circuit of the Americas. And I think it's going to be AJ Allmendinger getting it done. I think we may have to wait all the way till then. Looking at Phoenix, I can't think of any particular well, with the exception of Daniel Hemrick, I don't see any particular drivers that have a forte compared to other drivers in the field like Noah Gragson at Phoenix. But when we come to Atlanta, it's going to play a lot more like a super speedway race. So it's really just another wild card at this point. We can only speculate it's going to be a wild card. Because we'll get to that when we get to it. But I think the safe pick is Circuit of the Americas. When we get to the first road course, AJ Allmendinger has a great shot.
Yeah, I think you've got to think with how strong Colleague have been on the super speedways, Daytona and Talladega. I think they're certainly going to win one of those races this year with one of those 3 drivers. And we all know how good AJ Allmendinger is on the road courses. He's the all-time winningest driver on those kinds of tracks in the Xfinity series. And a lot of those wins have come with Colleague Racing. So I think a win is certainly, multiple wins, I would say, certainly in the cards for them this year. And I think it's only a matter of time. We know the cars have the speed, and we know the drivers have the talent to get the job done. So certainly think that it's only a matter of time before they get into victory lane. And the driver that got into victory lane on Saturday was Ty Gibbs. We've been talking a lot about him in his young career recently. The 5th time already in 21 starts that Gibbs has entered victory lane in the Xfinity series. The 19-year-old has made quite a name for himself through his first 21 starts, but has also ruffled some feathers quite a bit in the Xfinity garage, and that was no different on Saturday. He made contact with Ryan Sieg, who's competing on a fraction of a budget that Gibbs is for his own family team. Didn't take too kindly to the contact after he spun out, and even went so far as to attempt to retaliate on track. So one last question here in the Xfinity portion of the show, Brandon. We know Ty Gibbs has a lot of talent, obviously, but it's clear at this point that he has gotten to be a little bit over-aggressive in his young career. Do you think that speaks to a larger issue that we see among young drivers in the sport today?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like an old geezer and, well, these young kids, they just don't know how to drive. But, I've never driven a race car either, so I don't know. But, yeah, just from a onlooker perspective, Ty Gibbs does show a little more aggression than some of the older gentleman drivers. When I think of a gentleman driver, the first name that comes to mind is Terry Labonte, the old Texan. But yeah, I think his overaggression might get him into a little bit more trouble here with some older drivers. And I think this Ryan Sieg, Ty Gibbs fiasco, if it's not already been turned into a Curb Your Enthusiasm meme, somebody better get on that quickly, and your video will blow up. But yeah, I think he's got to be careful. He's a great, talented driver, but I think he's going to get picked. He's going to be picked on a lot because he's got granddad's money, and people think that's the only reason he's there. But he's got some talent. I know he's strong with his faith, and that really impresses me as well. I hope he sticks with that throughout his career. For sure, he's very young, and but I think he's also, that's the thing, he's very young. So I mean, I wouldn't hurt on him too much yet. I feel good about him. I'll end it there.
Yeah, I think Gibbs got a lot of flack this weekend because, it was him who was involved in the controversy of the week, if you will, I guess, with Ryan Sieg being taken out. But, I think, if I had to answer a question, I think, yes, this is an issue that we've seen the last few years, particularly, as racing has gotten more and more expensive. Ty Gibbs certainly has some advantage in that regard in terms of who his grandfather is and the situation that he was born into. And of course, that's no fault of his own. And I think anyone who's saying that's the only reason he's here at this point is just blind. I mean, we can see that he certainly has won a lot of races. But I think that's the case for a lot of these young drivers. And, nowadays with how long it's been that way, they're at the point where they're now in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series and now even in the Cup Series as well. And I think, this maybe goes back to even when you're in the ARCA stages of your career. And, you see it all throughout, obviously, with the comparison to the Xfinity Series. If your dad is the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or whatever, you have sponsors for life as long as you're racing. Yeah. You don't really have to worry about going and tearing up your equipment because you have financial backers who will pay for a new car, pay for new parts, or pay for repairs or whatever, and you'll go back out next weekend and try again. Whereas somebody in Ryan Sieg's situation or somebody in one of the independents situation that we might see in ARCA or trucks as well, that might be the only race car they have, or one of only a couple of race cars they have. You can only count on one hand how many parts and pieces they have to work with week in and week out. So an accident for them is a lot more devastating in terms of their budget, in terms of their resources, than it would be for somebody racing for a top team or a top team's development affiliates or whatever the case may be. So I think that sometimes changes the approach in terms of how somebody like Ty Gibbs might feel comfortable racing and the aggressive moves and risks that they might feel comfortable taking, as opposed to somebody like in Sieg's situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Ryan Sieg just paid the price, no question, for that retaliation. There was no reason for that. And might get parked for something like that if he tries it again.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. Seeing Sieg go out there, I thought, I get the anger and frustration in the heat of the moment for somebody in his situation in particular. He knows what his budget is. He owns his own car with his family. So to make a move like that and risk only making things worse, and then also kind of getting the evil eye from race control and from NASCAR for retaliation, definitely wasn't the brightest move, I think. I think Ryan Sieg has a lot of talent. I think he's shown that with the strong runs he's had in Xfinity, and dare I say it might be only a matter of time before he finally breaks through and maybe goes into victory lane as well. But that's something that you can't be doing, especially not at the level of the Xfinity Series.
Yeah, right now I think Ty Gibbs is getting the call from Ace Moneymaker about he's got the rival of Ryan Sieg coming into Phoenix. So definitely have to watch out for that. Some bad blood between these two. Hopefully the cooler head will prevail and they'll get over this and move on with the season.
That's a throwback, Ace Moneymaker. I haven't heard that name in a while, but I do have good memories of that.
There's also a Twitter account out there.
There is,
masquerading as Ace Moneymaker.
Yeah, somebody runs an Ace Moneymaker account. I wonder who that is. But all right, well, wrapping up the show here. Thinking about, Brandon, we only had 2 races this weekend. Not too much to pick from, but if you had to pick a one shining moment from what we saw in the 2 series that we cover that were in action this weekend, what would you go with?
Darn it. I did not pick beforehand, so now I'm going to have to quickly...
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go ahead and go first. Last week it was T-Bane, so
all right.
I do remember that.
It's, again, it might surprise some people if you know where I stand on this issue. You know how I feel about it in general, but I cannot get over Kyle Busch's recent track record in the Truck Series. And before I get too far into it, let me talk about the winner of the race. Of course, one shining moment, I guess, 1B to Chandler Smith for winning the race, 1A going to Kyle Busch for what he has continued to do, winning races in the Truck Series, finishing second, top 2 finishes 90% of the time. It's a record that, is simply incredible when you consider how different the trucks drive from the Cup cars and only doing this a few times a year, oftentimes without practice or qualifying. It's a record that I think we should appreciate and talk about and admire, no matter how we feel on the issue, generally speaking. So that is my one shining moment. Kyle Busch continuing to extend that streak of 90% top 2 rate in trucks. I think that's definitely something that we have to give a lot of credit for.
All right. I think I've decided. Well, I'm going with the last thing we talked about here. Ty Gibbs notching another win in his young career, and doing it by where you end up with Ryan Sieg shaking his fist in the air like, I'll get you next time. So to be continued, but Ty Gibbs get another notch. That's the one shining moment.
Yeah, Ty's certainly on good track in his career, and I think you're going to see a lot more wins from him. Probably not just in the Xfinity Series this year, but in the years to come, and probably at the Cup Series level as well. I think he is certainly on a good track for his career, as is Chandler Smith. So credit to the 2 race winners this weekend. And that is going to do it for us tonight. Be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network here on YouTube. Follow us on all our social media platforms you can see on the screen: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We have it all. Invest in the Grid Network as well. Take 5 minutes after the show and consider joining our Patreon to help keep us on the air as we continue this 2022 season. And of course, a big thank you as always to Colin, Deshelle, Mark, and Robin for investing in our Patreon. Also to Edward, Amber, and Zachary. Thank you so much for buying us a coffee. The link to buy us a coffee or one-time donation option is in the description below. You can buy a coffee for your favorite on-air talent, not just me and Brandon, but anyone else you've seen in the chat tonight. Joe, Kobe, and Adam, and everybody else here at Grid Network. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsport media outlet. Big thank you to our sponsor, Public.com, the stock market social media home. The referral code in the link below will give you $5 to invest. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends, make new friends, and use tools to learn how to invest in the stock market. Wednesday night, as always, we'll have Grid Tonight with Adam and Kobe. They will continue to update the ongoing situation in Ukraine and how it's impacting the motorsports world. And we will likely know Nikita Mazepin's official replacement. I think there's a lot of people saying it's probably going to be Pietro Fittipaldi. We'll know for sure on Wednesday, probably, and we will get you that information there, so stay tuned for that. On Thursday, Joe and Daniel host Women in Motorsports. They'll discuss Hailie Deegan's race weekend in Las Vegas, among other things. As always, you can catch Grid Live pre-race on Saturday and Grid Live wrap-up on Sunday. Brandon and I will be right back here on Monday night for another episode of Grid Live Encore. We have the Xfinity Series taking on Phoenix, and then ARCA returns with a combination race. I've seen the entry list come out today. I think 40 cars on the entry list there with this combo race with the ARCA Menard Series West. So certainly some great ARCA action to look forward to. And I think if that season finale for ARCA West was any indication last year, we'll be in for a treat on Friday night when ARCA returns to the track.
Looking forward to it.
I am as well. So for Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful rest of your week.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, Public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on Public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on Public.com.